You were meant for more than this. You were created for more than just mere survival. You were dreamed up by God to live life to the full and overflowing. Every person was uniquely and lovingly created in the image of God. And inside every person is a divine spark, the very breath of God. Now imagine if that spark grew inside you. Imagine your life full of the very essence of God, full of the love, life of God, filling you in every way. That's an inspired life. That's the kind of life that you were meant to live. That's the kind of life that Jesus died to provide for each of us. Live inspired. Live life to the full and overflowing. Hello. Well, good evening. It's our time again. We're jumping on together. I'm excited about this 21-day summer fire challenge, and I'm looking forward to us as we grow together. Today I'm gonna be sharing some stuff that I think will be really encouraging to you guys this Saturday night, and I'm going to be brief, but I think this is going to be we're going to be covering some stuff that I think is something that we really don't spend enough time really dealing with in a practical way. So I want to help you to reshape the rhythms that move us, and so I'm going to be talking about that. I'm talking about this idea of the rhythms that move us, and I really want to ask you the question as you kind of think through, tonight and about your journey. What is moving you in your life? What is moving you in your life? When you think about this, think about your habits. You think about your relationships. You think about what the influences of your city, of your culture, of your friends or family, what have you. What is moving you in your life? What is moving you? What is propelling you forward in one direction or another? And the truth is that we're all being moved by many things, not even just something. And we're all being shaped. Everything in this world is moving to shape us. And in Romans, when Paul says that don't be conformed or be pressed into the mold or the pattern of this world, it's because the world and the world systems, everything around us is working to shape us into something. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves is what is really moving us? And so today we're talking about the rhythms that move us, the rhythms that move us. And I'm excited. I'm excited about to cover this. I think there's some things in here that I think will be deeply encouraging for you guys. And I hope we get a lot out of this. So I want to encourage you guys, rhythms that move us. Let's jump into this right now. I think one of the things that is really important to get is that a rhythm is a regular repeated pattern of sounds or movements, a regular repeated pattern of events or changes or activities, right? So when we're thinking about the rhythms that move us, we have to understand that there's some repeated patterns in our lives. There's some things that have shaped us and impact us and influence us in ways that maybe we don't really notice, but they're happening, right? And there's these repeated patterns and repeated cycles. And you've got to ask yourself, when you begin to see these patterns in your life, what's impacting these patterns? What is shaping these rhythms? This is of paramount importance that we pay attention to this and we take ownership of the rhythms and patterns of our lives. Because hear me out, when we get this, we'll understand that when you find your rhythm, you find his life. When you find your rhythm in life, that the one that's helping you elevate to your highest potential, helping you elevate to a deeper, more impactful relationship with God, a deeper fellowship with him, that's elevating you and challenging you and every other area of your life. Like when you find that rhythm, you find his life. And when we get in rhythm with God, we begin to allow the life of God to flow through us freely. And there's a really important passage that I think every Christian really does need to hear. And it is this passage in 1 Corinthians 9:24 through 27. It says, "Don't you know that the runners in a stadium all race, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way to win the prize. Now, everyone who competes exercises self control in everything, right? They do it to receive a perishable crown, but we an imperishable crown. So I do not run like one who runs aimlessly or box like one beating the air. Instead, I discipline my body and bring it under strict control so that after preaching to others, I myself will not be disqualified. After preaching to others, I myself will not be disqualified. He said, hey, we're running this race. We're moving in this direction. We all have these goals in our life. And he's specifically talking about us as believers, that we're running this race for eternity, and we're not running for some perishable crown. We're not running for the portfolio or the accolades or the trophy, or even a earthly legacy. All those things are great in and of themselves, but that's not what we're running for. All those things are destined to perish. We're running for a crown that is imperishable. And I want to ask you, are you living for eternity, or are you living for the moment? And I think we want to be present in the moment, but live for eternity. I want to be clear about that. We want to be present in the moment, present with who we are with, present in what we're doing, in the work that we have, in the relationships that we have, in the situations when being present here, but live, make decisions, pattern our lives for the maximum impact, blessing, strength, whatever however way you want to word it, for eternity, that we're thinking about forever. Because listen, this life is temporary. We're living for the dashes, right? Between the numbers. You've seen that before, right? This person on a tombstone, they have their day they were born, a dash, and the day they died. And we're living for that dash. And that dash is so iconic for us when we think about eternity, because life is here and it's gone. It's here and it's gone. And are we living for the moment, or are we living for eternity? And I would challenge us, let us live for eternity. Let's live with forever in mind. Let's live for our maximum impact, our maximum influence in mind. And if we're going to do that, then we're going to have to pay attention to what is shaping us and begin to get serious about the rhythms of that move us, because you are being moved by something. Maybe you're being moved by a love for your family. Maybe you're being moved by a love for accolades or status or money. Maybe you're being moved by a sense of purpose or call, or being moved by a desire to be healthy or a desire to be loved. There's all kinds of reasons, and most of them are usually pretty good. However, they are often temporary. And so we want to realign ourselves, because what happens is that when we get in rhythm with God, when we find your rhythm, when you find your rhythm, you find his life. And we want his life in us. We want his life flowing through us. The best that God has for us is far infinitely better than anything that we can come up with on our own. And so, how do we do this? How do we create rhythms in our life that will actually move us towards God's best? And so, I like to talk about what I reference as the inspired rhythms, right? Inspired rhythms. And inspired rhythms are the spiritual practices of divine life. And the idea here is that we're all in rhythm, right? And what rhythm are we in? There's actually a lot of science about frequencies, which is very interesting. But there's power here if we'll get it. And so we want to say, you know what, the most important rhythms of my life are going to be the spiritual rhythms, because everything will flow out of the spiritual rhythms. Everything will flow out of the spiritual rhythms. Listen, I don't want to minimize this. This is really important. You understand this. When you have different spheres of your life. You have this natural physical realm. You have your emotional. You have your spiritual, and you have these relational realms, and And there's these kind of realms in our life that are really, really fundamental to who we are, our identity, our purpose, our life. But what happens is, like, let's say this realm of our career and our productivity and our work, if that is what is at the center, everything revolves around that. Then what happens is that becomes the thing that we invest our most time in, and that's where we will get our reward from, right? The problem with a career being the center, or even family being the center, as beautiful as that is, it's not enough for eternity. It's only in the temporary realm. And so we want to actually center our lives around what is eternal and allow everything else to be influenced, to have our life, our relationships being influenced by our sense of eternity and our purpose with God, our work, our finances, our emotional health, our physical health. Everything that we're doing revolves around this idea of our spiritual understanding of who we are, who we're becoming, what God wants us to do. This is so, so critical that we understand this. And so I'm talking about that the center of these rhythms that move us, there's a lot of rhythms that are really good, but at the center of them, it needs to be these inspired rhythms. And I want to kind of go through them real quick. In the future, I'll be sharing more in depth on these and taking some time to really unpack these in ways that we can understand them more fully. But I want to get really practical with you on just simply what are they? What some simple things that we can do to kind of think through them, to understand them, begin to apply them. And then actually, how do we begin the process of reshaping our rhythms, these spiritual rhythms in our life? I call these inspired rhythms, these God breathed rhythms in our life that are going to help us move forward towards God's best. And so here we go. The first is silence and solitude. This is active listening and simply just being with God. And you heard me talk about this. Probably one of the singular most important rhythms, and it's usually one of the most neglected rhythms in the life of the believer. And silence and solitude, this is about taking time to be still and listen to God's voice. It's about finding a place where you can be alone with God and allow Him to speak to your heart, right? Dallas Willard said it this way. He said, "Silence is not just the absence of noise; it's the presence of God." I love that. That's a really powerful statement. And so we want to be really clear. Silence and solitude is that next one. Right, and the second is Bible study and meditation and memorization. This is where we're allowing ourselves to get in the Word and allowing the Word to get in us and shape us in really powerful ways. The third is prayer, worship, and intercession. These are rhythms, right? And these all work together. These are you can probably have conversations about them individually, but silence, solitude, Bible study, meditation, memorization, work, prayer, worship, and but I've grouped them together because they actually flow together simply, right? So worship is a form of prayer, right? Intercession is a form of prayer, but they are pretty distinct when we're thinking about praying, worship, and intercession, our understanding. So we're kind of blending these together. And the idea of prayer, worship, and intercession is is that this is about just simply talking to God and asking Him to move in our lives and in the lives of others. It's about just us in conversation with God and fellowship with God and communion with God and and speaking to Him and asking Him to speak to us and move in our lives and the lives of those around us. You know, Ian Bounds, one of my favorite authors, he said this: prayer is the breath of the soul. Prayer is the breath of the soul. I don't know how to say that any better, right? So if you're not praying, you're spiritually, you're not breathing. And I don't know how long you can hold your breath until you pass out, until big bad things begin to happen. But I can tell you this, all right, it is way you can be a walking zombie, right? You can be walking and be dead inside. And we need to be people of prayer, not just people who pray, but actually become people of prayer. Right. The next is fasting and fighting the flesh, and this is about spiritual warfare against our flesh, and where we're setting the focus and the agenda on saying that God, you know, I'm living your way. My life is about is you know, aligned with your purposes. I'm denying my flesh. I'm seeking your presence, and I'm seeking to get closer to you in a deeper way. I'm opposing spiritual forces of darkness that are in me and around me. This is a really powerful tool. And I can tell you that when you couple fasting and prayer, it is like a supernatural, you know, weapon of mass destruction against darkness. If you've been fighting some addictions or some habits or some broken things, you're going through a very dark time in your life, you're walking through some very difficult decisions or challenges. I want to encourage you, take some time to spend deep time in fasting and prayer, and you will see breakthrough. There's something supernatural that happens when we do this, right? The next inspired rhythm is biblical community, and for a lot of us, and I hope you will, we'll be gathering together, tomorrow. For most of us, it's in the morning, right? So, gathering with the church, and this is beautiful. Now we want to be cautious that we don't confuse a big corporate kind of spiritual gathering as community, because you can actually walk into a church, say hi to people, smile, sit next to people you like, sing the songs, hear the message, pray the prayer, and leave and still feel like you're alone. Wrestle with loneliness, wrestle with being unknown, feel like you don't have anyone that you can talk to or go to. So I would say that big gathering is wonderful. It's important. It's inspiring for a lot of us, but it's super important that we actually get engaged in biblical community. That the way I like to say it is that church looks more like Sunday dinner and less like a rock concert. And the church feels more like family and less like an organization, or less like an event, right? There needs to be a real deep sense of biblical community where we are sharing life together. This is of paramount importance for us as believers, and all of these are super important, and we want to begin to instill these rhythms in our life if we want to move towards God's best. And the next is Sabbath rest. This is so critical, and again, so often, I don't know why it's so controversial for people, and I don't know why people oppose it. It is one of the most life-giving things that you can do. All right. And just really briefly, Sabbath rest is about setting aside one day, a 24-hour period, to rest, reflect, recharge in God's presence. It's a rhythm about taking a break from like a busyness of life, the focus of production, and bring our focus and our intention towards God, allow Him to refresh us. But it's more than that, right? It's a way of life. It's a Sabbath rhythm of that forces us to rethink how we do life. When you know that Sabbath is coming, and it's steady and rock solid in your life, then you begin to make decisions leading up to Sabbath that position you to create space in your life to breathe. And ultimately, Sabbath is about four critical things. It's about rest, just physical, emotional, mental, spiritual rest. It's about worship, right? Spending time in worship, connecting to God, in authentic pursuit. It's about relationships. Your marriage, your family, your friends, your children. It's about spending time with people and being in a relationship. Nothing stressful, but this is just it's a life-giving rhythm of relationship. And then, no, the fourth is often, I think, just completely neglected, and it's celebration. It's a day where we feast, right? You feast on Sabbath. It's you don't bemoan. We're not fasting on the Sabbath. I mean, unless you're on an extended fast. But a fast, but the Sabbath rest is about it's about drinking in the goodness of God, right? It's about drinking in the goodness of God. And I would say, I mean, have you drunk in the goodness of God deeply recently? And when we Sabbath, we're doing that. It's just like, whew, you let go, you breathe deep, you receive from Him. It's powerful. It's powerful. And then the next is, I'm gonna put it up so you can read it, is a sacrificial service and generosity. And this is a rhythm that we're just living in this place where we're giving and we're serving, even if it hurts, and probably until it hurts, right? We're given when it starts to hurt. That's when we know that we're in that right spot. When it's uncomfortable, when it's difficult, when it's challenging. It doesn't mean it's not joyful, because I think you can give and be joyful, but man, hey, this is a stretch. Man, I gotta cut some things. I gotta say no to some things so I can say yes to the things that I think are more important. Right? I gotta say no to to eating out every day so I can give towards, these people in need, or I gotta create a budget and live by a budget so that I can actually prioritize tithing in my life and giving back to God and His kingdom. Or I really need to, I really got to say no to watching the game so I can help, this person move who really needs a help, right? Or I can spend time with my kids and really invest in them and sacrifice what I want for what I want more, right? And or what's more important. And there's all kinds of things. And in our world, we call sacrifice. And man, come on, let's be real. Most of us in the West, that we don't make a whole lot of sacrifices. Like when you think about real sacrifices, eh, you know. But you know what? If you're used to something and you got to cut it out, you feel the sting, and that's okay. We've got to deny the flesh, and we need to create a rhythm of sacrificial service and generosity. Well, that's a normal flow of our life where we say no to what we want to say yes to what is most important. And there's a strength in that. And there's a shaping in us when we live this way. And then the last is hospitality and missional living. Hospitality is a lost art for a lot of people, and there's some cultures that cherish it so much, especially overseas. But hospitality, if you got this gift, is so beautiful. But simply put, you're making space in your life to love on people, right? You're making your home, your life, your time, your space, welcoming to people, right? So they can enter into your world and receive your love, right? And that the love of God will flow through you onto them. Hospitality is simply that. Like, what would it be like if I were seeking to channel the very love of God towards this person, to channel the goodness of God towards this person, to channel the kindness of God towards this person? What would that look like? And this is so important. We understand this. This is a really important thing. And so, hospitality, but that leads into missional living. That when you begin to make space for people in your life, when you make space for people in your life, you position yourself to make a big difference in them, or and they're more apt and open to the gospel. And this is really powerful. But the early church, they turned Rome upside down in a lot of ways. But one of the most significant ways is often not discussed is what they had, what was called love feasts. And so they would have communion together, but they'd all bring food, and then they would actually feed the hungry, the slaves, the poor that are around that were in Rome. And so every time they would do this, and you can actually read, there's some ancient letters that were passed down where they were actually making reference to these people of the way. They would these people who are following Christ, how they were giving, and how Rome, if they wanted to win the favor of the people, they need to start doing that kind of stuff. It's really interesting how the church turned the world upside down, not by an evangelism campaign, not by a concert, not by some massive missionary initiative, but by simply setting a table and inviting people. And can I tell you, that still works, right? And we would set a table and make room for people in our life. And there's something so powerful. So how do we do this? How do we begin to prioritize so that we make space for people in our life, right? And so when you find your rhythm, you find His life. And so here's what we can do. I'm gonna make it so you can read it some more. All right, read it a little bit better. So one is that you identify your values and priorities. So if you're going to create, or kind of craft your own rhythm of life, the rhythm that moves you towards the best that God has for you, you got to identify, hey, what's the values that I want to live up to? What's the values that God's given me? What are the things that I value most? What are the priorities in my life? And you know what? If you list everything, then you really list nothing. So you need to say, there's a lot of things that I love, that I value, but these are the priorities in my life. And I think it's really important that you identify those things. And for me, for one of them is my relationship with God. I want to be in fellowship with God. I want to be in a deep friendship with Him, and I want to be obedient to Him and live for Him. And that is the chief value for me. But then the other is in my relationship with my wife and with my kids. The impact that I make in people's lives. I want to live as a blessing. I want to live generously. I want to live as an encouraging voice, blessing people. There's some things in my life that I value and prioritize, right? And I have my own list. You need to write yours, okay? Identify your values and your priorities, and then discern which practices are most meaningful and effective for you. So the practice we talked about, okay, what's going to be what are some of those practices, those inspired rhythms, what are most meaningful or effective for you right now? And there's some things in your life that you really just need to focus on fasting and fighting the flesh right now. Or maybe you need to focus on prayer and worship or Bible, meditation, and memorization. Start memorizing some Bible or whatever it is. But you need to be thinking about, hey, what are most meaningful to begin to institute in my life. The next is begin to tailor your practices to your own life and circumstances and needs. And this is so it's just common sense, but I just think we often say we want to pray, but we don't actually think about, well, when is that going to happen? When am I going to remember to do this? What kind of reminders am I going to set for this? Just some practical things. I got kids. What's the best time for me to spend time in prayer? It's probably not going to be we're hustling to get the kids to school, or when we're trying to put the kids to bed. I gotta create space. I gotta think about my normal life. And the thing is that this stuff changes. The rhythms in our life, we've got to make it adaptable for whatever's going on. But you need to be intentional, okay? And the next is use resources to help you guide your practices. I put together a workbook actually for creating your own rhythm of life, and I'll actually share that at some point in the future. I'm gonna I'll do some teaching on that and share that as a resource. But you need to use some resources, and then you need to evaluate and adjust your practices regularly. You gotta do this, right? You gotta evaluate it. You have to evaluate, examine. Hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm doing. This is what's important. This is how well it's working, how it's not. Man, I really need to work on this. I need to change this or shift this. And when you do that, you're making the rhythms of your life an integral part of you, right? You're intentionally investing in the rhythms that will move you forward, because the alternative is what, right? The alternative is what? That you don't, right? That you don't invest time in it, and then what happens, right? You just go, you just the waves and the current of life just sweep you away, and you get caught up in whatever is going on in that moment, that you're facing right now. And maybe that's healthy, maybe it's not. But the truth is, you're gonna have to wrestle through that. And you're gonna wonder, man, how did I get here in my life? How did I allow my marriage to fall apart? How did I get so physically out of shape? Or how did I allow myself to get so far from God? And, I can't believe this happened. I blinked and 6 months happened. I haven't been in church or 6 years. And and the thing is you, life is gonna do that to you, right? The systems of this world are dominated by darkness. They're not going to move you haphazardly towards God's best. You've got to intentionally connect to God and engage Him, and be intentional about the process of creating rhythms that will move you towards God's highest glory and your greatest good. And that starts when we prioritize our relationship with Christ. And I want to encourage you to do that now. I want to encourage you to do that now. Identify your values, discern which practices are most meaningful, tailor the practices to your own life, use resources to guide you in these practices. And there's a lot of them out there, Bible reading plans and so on. And then evaluate and adjust. And you got to have a regular rhythm where you're looking at your life, examining it, and readjusting. And I just want to encourage you. I appreciate you being on tonight. I know this was a lot of more practical teaching. I hope it was encouraging to you. If everyone watching this on a Saturday night, or on the replay, I encourage you with that one rhythm about biblical community. You get to church tomorrow. If you haven't been in a long time, just you need to suck it up and just get up, throw some clothes on, find the kids shoes. If you got kids, you get their clothes together. You know how that goes. Just get all that stuff together before you go to sleep, and get up and get to church. And if you want to join us at 9:30, we're going to be at the Winter Park Country Club tomorrow. And I encourage you to meet us and worship with us. But if you go to a church, man, or you have a home church that you just haven't been in a while, man, get to church, be part of fellowship with the body, connect with people in biblical community. And if you're like, man, I'm done with church, and we meet together at round tables, we have some discussion, and we do church a little bit different. And but I would encourage you, get invite believers around, open the Bible, pray, worship. I'm gonna do a training on how to actually have church in your house, because you can do that. I want to help you, but you need to get in biblical community. That is the singular thing I want you to understand right now in this moment, before we kind of log off, is that you just need to, no, your life never changed because you slept in, right? But it may change because you met another brother that you can really connect with, another sister you can connect with, another family that you can do life with. It could change dramatically because you got a word from God that God spoke something into you that began to be a catalytic thing that you stirred up as you move forward in biblical community. But there's some catalytic moments that happen in those Sunday morning gatherings that you cannot reject. You really need to experience. And either way, you got to get in biblical community. So go do it. All right. God bless you guys. I want to pray for you. Father, I just lift up your people right now, and I'm just asking you that you would move in power in their life. God, there's a lot of rhythms that and influences that move us and shape us and propel us into directions that sometimes we don't want to go, or go against the direction that we're trying to head in. And so I just ask you that you would help us to reshape and reprioritize the rhythms of our life, to think through the things that we are doing, the patterns and habits of our lives, and begin to be intentional about those things, not just in the physical, but in the spiritual as well, in the financial and the relational, that we would think through the full spectrum of our life and think about how your rhythms can impact and influence and shape us towards your best. So I just ask you, Father, as we seek to stir that fire up in our hearts and grow in grace and grow in becoming the men and women that you've called us to be, I just ask you, Father, you would help us to align our rhythms with you, to experience the life that you desire for us, that we wouldn't be blown and tossed away by the wind. We wouldn't be moved about by the waves and the pressure and influences of this world, but we would be intentional about the rhythms of our life that move us towards your highest purposes and greatest good and your ultimate glory. I just ask it in Jesus' strong name. Amen and amen and amen. Hey, I want to say thank you guys for watching, and I pray, if you're watching this live on the replay, just drop it in the comments. Give a little shout out. Say if you're watching replay, like hashtag replay or something that's standing out to you. But I want to ask you, of those 8 rhythms, which is the one that has made the biggest impact in your life right at this point in your life? And so I want to encourage you guys, to comment in there as you do. God bless y'all. I love y'all. I'm praying for y'all. Get your fire back and get to church tomorrow. Bless you. Have a good one. I'll see you tomorrow night. I see you tomorrow or tomorrow night. Bye bye.